Welcome to our program to celebrate the launch of the NextGen Network Report, How Artificial Intelligence Can Work for Humanity. My name is Vivian Schiller. I'm Executive Director of Aspen Digital, today in partnership with the Aspen Institute's international partners and our sponsors at Microsoft. So a little bit of background before we get started. The NextGen Network is a partnership between Aspen and Microsoft. We've been bringing together 130 young leaders across Europe, Mexico, to talk about the increasing role that technology plays in every aspect of our lives, and to address both the opportunities and challenges that presents for society. Those 130 young leaders come from technology, business, policy, journalism, and civil society, and represent the informed perspective of millennials the world over, as they are indeed inheriting the world. Their feedback is informing policy discussions at the local, national, and even global level. The NextGen Network folks have been holding workshops and digital discussions, and that has culminated in the NextGen Network Report, which we're about to drop a link into the chat box so you can check it out and scroll through it. But we're so excited to be sharing it with you here. A few thank yous before we get started. Huge thank you to our corporate sponsor, Microsoft, with particular thanks to Owen Larder and Dia Gerber, our international partners around the globe who inspired workshops and forums for NextGen members to discuss these important issues. That includes the Aspen Initiative UK, Aspen France, Aspen Germany, Aspen Mexico, the Ananta Aspen Center in India, and Aspen Central Europe. And finally, a huge thank you to the more than 130 NextGen members who have contributed and worked so hard in this report to advocate for ethical AI and to address challenges that communities face around the world. So here's the plan. We're going to have a panel with a couple of really impressive speakers. Then we're going to hear from some of our NextGen members, and then we want to hear questions from you. Anytime starting right now, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, drop in your question. We would ask, please, that you include your name and where you're coming to us from, because it just really helps to have that context. And we will get to, at least, we can't promise we'll get to all of your questions, but we'll get to as many as we can a little bit later. Okay, so let's get started. In today's panel, we are joined by Vice President Vera Jourila. She is the Vice President of the European Commission for Values and Transparency. The Commission addresses democracy, rule of law, disinformation, and media pluralism. She, prior to this, she served as EU Commissioner for Justice, Consumers, and Gender Equality. And before that, arriving at the European Commission, she held the position of Minister for Regional Development in the Czech Republic. She's also been an international consultant on European Union funding and holds degrees in law and in the theory of culture from Charles University in Prague. We are also about to be joined by Sarah Bird, who is the Principal Program Manager, Emerging Technology and Research Strategy Lead, and Responsible AI Lead for Microsoft Azure. That is a triple-barreled title, Sarah. Her work focuses on research and emerging technology strategy for AI products, looking to accelerate the adoption and impact of AI by bringing together the latest innovations in research and product to create new tools. She's been an active member at Microsoft on the commission that looks to drive company-wide adoption of AI principles and ethics, and previously worked in a similar capacity on AI fairness at Facebook. She has a PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley. Okay, so we're going to get started now. Let's bring both Sarah and Madam Vice President. I hope you don't mind. Can I call you Vera?
Yes, I'll be happy.
Okay, wonderful. Just to keep things a little bit simpler. So we're going to get started. Thanks very much. Again, reminder, drop your questions in anytime. So we're going to start with you, Vera. Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has challenged just about every aspect of governance in Europe and, of course, around the world. Talk to us a little bit about how technology has helped and can help rebuild trust in public institutions now and once the pandemic finally leaves us?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much once again for the invitation. I will try to be brief. Well, the corona crisis came as a stress test for many different parts of our life, including democracy and fundamental rights. We saw emergency regimes launched in almost all member states of the European Union. All the governments, for very good reason, strengthened their operational power, but it must not mean that the parliamentary oversight is switched off, constitutions, media freedom, and also the scrutiny done by the civil society. It was a woke-up call for all of us who deal with the democracy and fundamental rights matters to be more vigilant on whether the emergency regimes are necessary, proportionate, and time limited. And here the technologies help. Because the technologies enable the public to have better under control what is happening to them. Technologies can deliver information which is so badly needed in the time of crisis. The technologies can deliver, and now I am going into negative side, technologies can deliver disinformation which can be in COVID context dangerous to health or life. So that's why the union took action against that. I can tell you how, but I don't want to lose too much time on that. And the last thing, technology can help to combat coronavirus by using the tools for tracing, not tracking, but tracing, and to do it with full respect to fundamental rights and especially GDPR rules. And this is where we are focusing on emergency measures in a wider context, on use of cyberspace for informing and not disinforming, and use of digital tools for tracing but not spying or collecting the data which is not necessary for the purpose.
You're raising such a critical set of issues. We are seeing not just in the European Union but around the world, autocrats who are taking advantage, frankly, of the pandemic to suppress a free press and to take control of the functioning of government. And those same platforms that help us get information, help us get critical reporting that is important for public health, those same instruments are also delivering us mis and disinformation. Are you seeing the, can you be more specific about how you are combating where you are seeing both repression of a free press and how you are combating what has been dubbed, the infodemic, which is the huge amount of misinformation that puts public health at risk?
In such a crisis, you need to make pragmatic choices. For me, the pragmatic choice was that we desperately need to have not only media on the side of the truth and reliable information, but of course also the platforms such as Facebook, Google, and several others who deliver big amounts of information and also disinformation. So without the platforms, we could not do much. That's why I made an agreement with the biggest ones that they will proactively try to detect dangerous information for the health of people, that they will consult the health authorities, and then in case of the appearance of really dangerous kind of piece of disinformation for the health or life of people, that such disinformation should be removed. It is emergency regime. I would never like to see such regime for instance, political debate or something like that. COVID showed us one clear thing. Fighting against disinformation without at the same time proactive defending the trustworthy data and the truth, we cannot do much. That's why we also set and committed to increase our strategy communication. We encourage the health authorities to proactively provide information with the platforms enabling prominent space for that. It was a very important part of it. And it is a lesson for many other sectors. Like now we have adopted the asylum and migration package. Of course, the authorities which deal with migration and asylum, they should proactively inform people. The same with food safety and I don't know, minorities. We need to proactively communicate because we have to count is the fact that the disinformation produced in coordinated way from certain places, not always easy to identify from where, but in coordinated way with intention to distract our society, to mislead the people, maybe to make money on it, that it will always be there. That's the infodemic you mentioned. We are using to it and we are taking systemic steps against that.
Yeah, without a doubt, content manipulation campaigns coming from sometimes known or unknown sources are on the rise. I want to turn now to you, Sarah. We, in addition to, of course, the health crisis that we're experiencing and the infodemic about that health crisis, there have been 2020 has also brought another phenomenon, which is that protests have erupted. I think a lot of it was triggered in the United States, but have erupted globally to demand an end to racism and discrimination. And sometimes that includes technologies like, say, facial recognition, which may be perceived as violating somebody's privacy in public. Talk to us about what Microsoft is doing to respond to algorithm or data bias in technologies like AI.
Yeah, it's a really important topic and one that's near and dear to my heart. And so fairness is one of our responsible AI principles at Microsoft. And I think we all know that fairness and justice is a lot bigger than algorithmic bias, but it's a key part of the story, particularly when we're talking about developing AI. And so there's no simple one thing that we can do for this. And so our approach and practice is really a combination of things. One of the things that we released in late last year that I've been working on was an open source toolkit called FairLearn. And the idea with FairLearn is you can bring a data set that has a diversity of people or data that you want to look at to the toolkit along with your model, and it will actually go and compare how well that model performs across different groups of people. So you can start understanding if you're seeing a disparity between groups and figure out what you want to do about that. And some of the key things that we've had to do in this toolkit are really design the visualization and the dashboard to allow it to be a multi-stakeholder conversation. Fairness is not something, algorithmic bias is not something that the data scientists can solve on their own. It is something that you need many different people looking at. And so by really sort of innovating in visualizations that are easy to understand, we can have more people understand what's going on with any potential bias in the model and go from there. However, if you see that there's a disparity, there's a lot more that you're going to need to do to figure out if this is actually an issue. Is it a problem that there's a difference between these groups, or is there something very reasonable causing this? And so we need to take an approach throughout our machine learning lifecycle that really makes fairness a first-class citizen. And so a lot can be done if we start at the beginning with data, and we make sure that all of the different people and circumstances that we want this model to work for are represented in the underlying training data. And it's great to just say that, but it's not so easy to do often. And so we've had to go to experts to help understand what data we need to properly capture people and the experiences in different parts of the world or in different circumstances. And so really being intentional and carefully designing our data is a huge part of how we do this. The next step, of course, is then we need to design that assessment data set that we can feed into a tool like FairLearn so that we can actually really dig in and look at the numbers and understand if it looks different across different groups of people. However, once we see any potential difference, we don't really know what's causing that. And so we have to build tools that help us deeply understand what is causing differences in our model, what is causing errors in our model, how is the model making decisions. And so we have an open source tool called Interpret ML that we use to explain the model behavior, help us really understand how it's making decisions, what factors it's looking at. We also use a tool that we've published about called error analysis that clusters different types of errors so we can see where the most significant problems are and identify what's contributing to lower performance for a particular group. And beyond that, we can't just do this once. It's not like we build the model and it's fair and we put it out there. Every time we update the model, every time we release the model, we have to go through this same process. And so we have to make sure that this is just part of our production process. We do systematic testing every time we release. It's not something that is a side research project. It's really something that's just core to how we build models. And that's a great step forward for algorithmic bias and really looking at how the model performs across groups of people. But we have to go further than that. We have to look at issues which we would call representational harms, where the error itself has meaning, where it feels like a specific error might reinforce a stereotype, right? For example, tagging a picture in a way that feels like it's denigrating. And so we're taking these same tools and processes, but figuring out how to adapt them to understand that some errors have more meaning than others in the world. And so there's a huge amount of technology behind this, but also a huge amount of people and thinking and process that really allows us to help tackle this complex issue.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That's so much you're doing. So I just want to ask you a quick follow-up. You know, the NextGen members are particularly savvy around issues of AI, and they probably understand maybe better than many about how, you know, what to look out for, how to protect your own privacy, how to look, you know, how to think about, beware of misinformation and disinformation. So Sarah, how are you, what is Microsoft doing to help educate, you know, the public and consumers, particularly, you know, young people, to be good stewards of ethical data? And actually, Vera, I'd love to hear your response to that as well.
I think in the same way with algorithmic bias, there's no, you know, one thing that's going to solve such a problem. And so for me, one of the things I actually directly work on is an open source initiative started by Harvard that we have been working with, which is called Open Differential Privacy, OpenDP, where we've actually been creating a community where we can develop open source differential privacy tools in the public, so everybody can see them. We all can innovate together. Experts can actually test it and make sure that we're really implementing that. But alongside that is just going out and talking more about some of the privacy challenges, some of the things that we're seeing, some of the things that a technology like differential privacy can solve. But of course, differential privacy is just still one piece of the puzzle. And so we're investing in homomorphic encryption, confidential computing, all of these pieces. But all of those are still a technology that needs a policy and needs governance and needs people to put them in place and decide still, you know, what is the appropriate place? What budget does which person get for the data for something like differential privacy? And so making sure that we're helping form communities where we can think about these challenging topics around privacy and information. And so very much the technology is a great way to start a conversation because it's something that's concrete. It's something that can change the trade-offs in the space and allow us to think differently. But it really is about showing what's possible, but then starting a bigger conversation around the real issues and the real trade-offs.
Thank you. Vera, talk to us. How are you helping the public become savvy and informed consumers of media, and also savvy about the benefits and perhaps the risks or challenges around AI-driven technology?
Well, I belong to those who need to learn much more. And believe me, when I'm thinking about my future, I am really scared about belonging to that community, that part of the community which will be excluded, technologically excluded. And when you spoke about, how did you say it, to form the communities, don't forget that not everyone is ready. The starting the level is not the same one. And I don't only speak about seniors, but I also speak about the young children, young people from poor families, and the children which belong to minorities, such as Roma children. I really have big worry not to prepare for them by looking into the rosy future with technologies, creating for them a hell on earth by not taking them with us. Yeah. And that's why I'm very happy that we are not only working on the digital education action plan, which we will adopt this year, which should have the money available for many different programs. And we are also encouraging the member states to invest in education in digital sphere. The money is now in the so-called recovery package, recovery fund, because we have already collected and adopted a decision. Still some steps to be done. Still the parliament has to adopt the package, but the member states in fact agreed on collecting the money for getting out of the crisis. And I really tried hard to push there this chapter of let's not leave anyone behind. Yeah. So the member states should use these funds for well done targeted digital education. And I have to say that also the big tech tries to invest. I will not try to promote anyone and any concrete action, but when we discuss with the managers of big tech companies, we always cover also this topic, how not to increase the technological gap, because it would be a fatal mistake for the future. Yeah. If I may use the opportunity also to, because this is a Microsoft supported event, so well, it's good to appraise the ones who are hosting. No, seriously, we when we were preparing the ethics guidelines for AI, we worked a lot with Microsoft. And I believe that it is true that ethics is that the law is the minimum of ethics, and so we wanted to start with ethics principles such as accountability and diversity, non-discrimination, fairness, transparency. All of them are now in our white paper. We take these principles as the steady pillars for the future possible legislation. One of the steady pillars there is also data protection or protection of privacy. And I think that it's very important that in due time, we realize that if we want to create new wealth, it should be better for the people. So it means not to copy paste the unfairness from real life into the AI world. Yeah. I am maybe too romantic after being many years in politics, but I believe that our task is to create better world. So that's it. Still on the question how the people are aware of how to behave in new digital era. The GDPR was a very useful lesson. We are still not there yet, because we wanted the people to take back the control over their privacy and over their identity. And we still need to invest more in awareness raising and education so that the people can use fully their new rights. because without that, the legislation will be only a sanctioning machine, but it should serve the people. Sorry, I was too long, but you made me excited.
First of all, I hope you never lose that idealism and optimism. So thank you for that. And you raised such an important point about the digital divide, how there is not equal access to broadband connectivity, to devices and equipment, and also to education and knowledge about digital media. So that is very important. But I want to follow up on your on a point you made about it's wonderful to hear that Microsoft has been such a good partner. But I want to just follow up. What do you think should be the role of tech companies, or big tech as you're calling it, to create and police their own themselves when it comes to data or algorithm bias, or versus what is the role of government?
I've been for some time in a system where we try not to make a mistake and overshoot the legislation in the EU. I hope you have noticed. So sometimes it's more difficult not to shoot, and we really tried to go in through the steady and predictable process. As I said, from the ethic guidelines towards the possible legislation which might come next year. But whatever we do on this way, we are constantly consulting with the businesses, big ones and small ones, because we also want the small and medium enterprises in the EU to take this advantage and to develop. It should not be just for US and China. We could speak about China also, but maybe let's stay in Europe now. And we want to, permanent consultations with the businesses, with the academics, and with the experts from the member states, because this is their territory where everything will be tested and implemented. We will always have light touch legislation, or at least in the next few years, because we do not want to hinder innovations. We do not want to create the space where risk avoidance will win. We want to use better the data, and I think that we have a good chance to set the right tone and come with the rules, be it horizontal or sectoral legislation, which will only shoot to the extent necessary.
Thank you so much. Sarah, I want to just come back to you in that spirit of building sort of a coalition and consultation in order to get to the right decisions. Talk to us a little bit about what you are doing to sort of distribute, the positive impact of what you're doing more equally. We talked before about the digital divide. Not everyone is connected. Not everyone has devices. Not everyone has the knowledge. You are doing such important work in your group at Microsoft. How do you make sure that it reaches the largest number of sectors and communities?
Yeah, it's a really hard topic as well, and really important. Inclusiveness is actually a separate principle that is one of our ethical AI principles, and it obviously has overlap with the fairness work, and the fairness work can contribute in making sure that the technology's impact lands more evenly across people, but there's a lot more that we need to do. And so there's different levels where we want to do this kind of work. One of them is, how do we bring more people into the conversation? Making decisions about technology is it's not something that just the technologists in the company need to do. It's something that we need to do as a society, and we need people from different backgrounds and people with different expertise, all able to actually collaborate and contribute to this conversation. And so that's where it's essential that we start groups like this, or the Partnership on AI, where we're able to bring together these different people to have these important conversations. And of course, then all of the education and topics that we already talked about, where we need to make more people in a place where they can understand what they need to understand to be able to contribute to the conversation. The next step is we need more people who are actually empowered to innovate and build AI. And so we do things like publish our research. AI, one of the things I love about being in this field is how incredibly transparent it is, how much we share about where the cutting edge is, what everybody is doing. We've also started initiatives like our open data campaign to enable more people to get access to data. I have spent my career working on open source tools that allow people to both actually, just use the tools and use the technology. But if you have some great idea that you want to add and you're not a big tech company, you're not in the position to make the entire tool, you can add your piece, you can add your innovation to the open source tool, and so it allows more people to contribute. My team actually, the organization I'm in, we are building pre-trained models. And so this is a place where now maybe you're not building the AI, but we want to empower you to actually be able to use it, right? So we'll be providing the model, whether that's as a service, as a product, or some sort of open source pre-trained model. But there's a lot that we need to do to make someone actually effectively able to use this, right? There's a lot that we know as a result of being experts in the technology and having actually built the model, seen the training data, all of that. And so we need to really be transparent about how we've built it. We've started adding transparency notes for all of our cognitive services, so you can go and understand the limitations of the model, how to get higher accuracy, how to deploy it responsibly, different considerations that might matter for your environment. And so having these transparency notes, having these deployment guidelines, being very clear about what we know and what we don't know, and what your context brings to the situation and what you need to do as a result of adopting this technology. And then, of course, the last piece is the models themselves, the part we were talking about, the algorithmic fairness. They actually need to result in good outcomes for more people, right? So the fairness work we talked about is one way to do this, but we also need to make sure that they're built taking more people into account. And so this is making sure that we start with things like impact assessment. So we think deeply about the potential impact of this technology on different groups of people, and we build that into our design so that we make sure we have the impact that we're hoping, and we don't have unexpected impact for groups that maybe hadn't been considered if we didn't really do this impact assessment exercise. We also make investments in things like specific technology for groups, like our Seeing AI application that adds new capabilities for the blind community, or investments like our AI for Good organization that actually give directly to funding for people that are trying to produce uses of AI that benefit more people. So there's a lot that we need to do to work on this, but I am really encouraged with how far we can go at each of these levels with the tools we have already.
Terrific. We are going to now turn to spotlight 3 of our NextGen members who are going to have some questions for both of you. But as a reminder, after that, we're going to go to your questions. So please enter your questions. There should be, depending on what kind of instance you have at the of the conference software, you should see a question mark at the top of your screen. Just click on that, enter your question. Please provide your name and where you are coming to us from, and we'll get to those shortly. But first, I want to introduce Sahasini Vera, who is coming to us from the UK, who's got a question for our panelists. Sahasini, over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Sahasini. I'm a lead law scholar, founder of the Clean Hands Initiative, and a NextGen member. My question to the panelists is, how can technology, particularly artificial intelligence, be used as a tool to strengthen democracy rather than to diminish it? Given that there's a lot of conversation around fake news, distrust with technology, Cambridge Analytica, increased surveillance, what can actually be done to develop technology in a positive way for the future of democracy?
Vera, let's hear from you on that question.
Yeah, I think that the only way is to have always the individual people with their rights in mind. Because when we start, as legislators, when we start to speak, to think about the people as a crowd, it's a fatal mistake, I believe. When I came to the Commission and I received GDPR on my table to finalize the proposal, I realized that this is about bringing back the individual people their rights, that this is about making the people subjects, not objects. And I think that this is the principle we have to keep. We are now entering the era when we will also invest a lot in digital technologies. And I am sometimes in sleepless nights thinking about whether we should first digitalize democracy or democratize digital. And I am afraid we have to do both. And first of all, we should come back to democratic way of public debate. This is a big topic also connected with algorithms, because when I spoke to Mark Zuckerberg, I told him, you have created tribes again. Over centuries, we wanted to get rid of them. We wanted to have a flat public agora, a debate where everybody is able to speak to everybody. And you came with your bloody bubbles, and suddenly the people are not able to discuss anymore. And I will always accuse the big tech that they, by the algorithms, they have privatized public debate. So that is a work to do. I think that last comment, as a legislator, we should be able in identifying the real risks and to address them by well-targeted rules and to leave the rest free to flourish, to develop, and also to leave it for the people themselves. Because you saw now, the people are rejecting to open the systems where there is a lot of hatred, racism, discrimination, manipulation. The people themselves have the instinct, no, we don't want it. The employees of some tech companies say, no, we do not want to work on in such a system, which is opening the space for bad things. You see the advertisers now who are rejecting to put money to the systems. I sometimes, when I speak to the masters and masterminds of the big tech, from some of them I will not name, but from some of them I have a feeling that they opened the shop with very healthy vegetarian food. And suddenly bad people invaded into it with very fat sausages. You know, I think that there is some work to do to come back to healthy food, but without censorship and without overshooting from the side of the legislators. Yeah. I promise.
I love the sausage metaphor, but you do raise a good point about trying to find that balance between maintaining free expression, but also not creating, not spreading misinformation and hate. We're going to go on to our next question. This one is from Henri Brabant, coming to us from France. Henri, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's great being with you. My name is Henry. I'm from France. I work on technology, open government, and innovation in the public sector. When I read the report, I noticed that some participants in EU countries rallied around the idea that we needed an EU-level policy, but some differences of priorities and perspectives remained. For example, in Western Europe, people wanted to focus on ethics first, and Central Europe people focused more on competitiveness. So my question is maybe more for you, Madam Vice President, and you already touched on it when you talked about having a light touch legislation. But I wanted to ask you, where would you locate the right level of governance for AI? Is it at the national, the European, or a global level? And if we should have different levels of competencies, where would you draw the lines?
I would really like to keep it on the European level because we want to remove the borders for the competitiveness reason, which, yes, I am coming from the East, but believe me, I bet both the ethical principles and the competitiveness as well. So to keep it on the European level is important for economy, for the single market. It is important also for the sake of global competitiveness, because if we lose time and lose the momentum and let the fragmentation to happen, we will make a big mistake. And to agree on the common principles for the EU, human-centric principles, for that we see a lot of willingness from the member state side. That yes, let's do it together. This is one of the not very problematic areas where we have a very strong blessing from the side of the state. And not to have small ambitions, I would really love to see some global alliance where we will join forces with democratic parts of the world, which will together say that there are some no ways for the technologies, so that we do not enable the technologies to start to work against the people. And I don't want to be over dramatic, but I was this year in January, I was in Auschwitz, and I heard about the method the Nazis used to learn which race the people were, how difficult it was to identify the Jew. Can you imagine? They have the current technologies. How easy it would be to destroy not only peaceful democratic life, but life as such. So let's take the lessons from the history. Let's be vigilant, let's join forces, because I think the World Alliance will have a big task to, World Alliance of like-minded democratic societies will have a cardinal task to push the rest of the world to follow suit and to take the human-centric approach as well. I told you I am a romantic, but we have to big goals.
I absolutely love your passion. Thank you so much. We're going to have one more question from a NextGen member, and then we're going to go to your questions. Please continue to drop them in. We're collecting them, and we'll get to them momentarily. So next up is Claudia Del Pozo from Mexico. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Claudia Del Pozo. I'm the director of the EON Resilience Lab at C-Minds, a Mexican think and do tank that works with governments and big techs to promote ethical and responsible AI in Mexico and Latin America. So my question is for both of you. Among the many changes that the pandemic has brought to the world, one of them has been accelerated digitalization. So we've seen that with schools here in Mexico, for instance, adopting more and more digital technologies to be able to continue operating during the pandemic, and in an infinity of areas. So what best practices, what tools, what guidelines are you putting into place at an industry level, but also at a government level, to be able to cope with this digitalization, with this accelerated digitalization? Because the conversation and the actions about ethics and regulations, we're always kind of lagging behind innovation, which we've seen in some senses can be a little risky. So now that it's even more urgent because the digitalization has been accelerated, what best practices can you guys share from your respective areas?
Sarah, let's turn that one over to you.
Yeah, it's, as always, a very important topic. And for me, actually, I have found parts of this very, very wonderful, because now we can have a conversation with people all around the world like we are right now in a digital space, which means more of us can contribute. Not everyone can get on an airplane and come and participate in that. I live in New York City, and so actually a lot of my team is in Seattle, where Microsoft's headquarters is. And so it's been a great level that now we're all individually on the same screen, and we're all using the same tools to communicate. And it's not just, for example, me off on the side. And so I think the first experience for me has been, wow, this is so positive. There's so much more that this can do to level the playing field. But that only works if we address some of what we were talking about earlier with the digital divide, right? We have to make sure that we're enabling people to use these tools, and we're giving them the resources they need to actually do that, and we're giving them the education they need to actually do that. And I think the rapid digitalization of everything only increases the urgency of this for us to have more people who have digital fluency and more people that have the resources to be able to get on a high bandwidth connection and participate in this type of conversation. And so I think that it's really, I think, been rapid in changing people's thinking, because it's been such a shock on how different this is, how different it is, even for a tech company that was already digital in terms of how we work. And I think we're really now starting to say, so what? So what can we do as a result of this? And simple things that we have been doing. For example, my team produces the AI that allows you in Microsoft Teams to actually, live transcribe the meeting, so people who consume information better that way, whether because of disabilities or just the way they learn or the way they like to consume information, now can actually read it. And so there's a lot we can do with technology, but a lot of it takes the other tools that we've talked about in terms of education and resources for people.
Thank you. I love that live transcription. I'm going to have to get my hands on that technology. Okay, we are now going to go to your questions, and apologies that we can't get to all of them. Your questions are so good. The first up is from Valerie Senichev. Forgive me if I am pronouncing that surname wrong. From the Czech Republic, your fellow countryman, Vera. So I will turn this one to you. How do you think that AI can help to find the vaccine against COVID-19? And I will add my own addendum to that too, is find the vaccine, but also drive adoption of a vaccine once there is one.
It's a question for me.
Yes.
I hope not.
That's why I added that second part about driving adoption, since I realized that neither of you are epidemiologists and drug manufacturers.
Well, I said that we do everything not to spread disinformation on COVID. So I do not want to do that myself. Yeah. I will just confirm that I suspect that the technologies, including AI, are involved in the testing of the vaccines, and that we have to deploy all the best newest technologies to have the vaccine as soon as possible, and to get rid of this horrible thing which invaded into our lives and which doesn't seem to move away yet. So I believe that all the researchers work with the AI, and they do it in a safe manner. So let's wish them good luck. I just want to say on the vaccine, there is a lot of now an increase of disinformation against vaccine. We have recorded a lot of conspiracy theories and really, sorry to say it, but stupidities which have no whatsoever evidence behind itself. And we already I saw some research that already in Germany, this has an impact on the public opinion, that 20% of people are seriously considering not to get the vaccine once it is ready. So we have to do a lot of information, informing people to take free choice. I will always defend the free choice of people, but informed and not manipulated free choice. And we have already took a risky step. We are investing in the research, and we prepared a lot of money to speed up the certification and to fund the production, so that as soon as we can, we have 300 million vaccines to be ready for the people, and not for those who are rich and fast. Yeah. So speaking about fairness, I think that here it's also worth mentioning that we try to be fair.
Information campaign is so critical. The vaccine is our only way out of it. The next question is from Tomasz Panek. Hopefully I pronounced that right, coming to us from London. And the question, and I'm going to direct this one to you, Sarah, is how are you ensuring that AI is being built with underrepresented and minority groups in mind?
A bunch of different ways, but one of the key things, right, which we've heard talked about very publicly in tech, is really having that diverse team, right, that enables you to have that different perspective on the team, bringing that different point of view, but that only goes so far, right? The team only has so many people on it, and so that's, you know, a step that helps, but not you know, complete. And so one of the key tools that we're using is a sort of let's say a new idea for responsible AI, not a new idea in the world, which is taking this idea of impact assessments and building that in as a foundational step in our technology creation, where when we're conceiving of even producing a technology, we bring together a diverse team, we bring together experts in different areas to envision and model the potential impact of this technology, intentionally considering these different groups and different circumstances that people might be in. So then the development team can go in with this report, with this information saying, these are the things you need to design for, these are the things that you need to consider, this is what you need to watch out for, this is a group that you need to pay special attention to, and it's not just this is the name of a group, but here's the specific concern that we're worried about, or the specific feature that we want to enable, or the experience we want to create. And so that's been one of the big steps. Actually sort of, I would say, wonderful experience has also been all of the amazing tools that design and user research have, right? They have actually, you know, built an entire discipline around understanding how to make technology work for people and understanding the differences in their needs. And so putting them in the beginning of the conversation, not at the end when we've already produced the technology and they're just deciding what color the web page should be, but making sure they're a foundational part, has been another big part of how we have really done that. Again, all of this is important, but we've also had to go directly to experts representing different communities externally, advocacy groups, to get a better understanding of that community and how technology may affect them and things we need to consider. And so it's everything we were talking about earlier in terms of inclusiveness, where we need to have conversations with all of the different people, but we also need to just build consideration for more people into our process and into our tech and into our test and all of that. And so that's the approach we're taking.
Thank you. So glad that you're taking that issue so seriously, and it was a really great question. Unfortunately, we are out of time. There were so many more great questions to get to. I'm sorry that we couldn't. We will try to find a way to keep this dialogue going. But I want to say thank you so much to Vice President Vera Yorila and Sarah Bird from Microsoft. Thank you to the representatives of our NextGen program. Thank you to everybody that was part of this today. Please check out the full NextGen report. We're about to drop the link once again into the chat box. And remember, the work of the NextGen network is not ending with this report and ending with this program. This is, the work continues. We are going to be expanding to more parts of the world. And we really look forward to more opportunities to engage with young leaders on these most important questions, which we only touched on today. So on behalf of the Aspen Institute and Microsoft, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.